talking to people on the street who say, well, maybe someday if I have the time and the resources, I'll go online. Let me tell you, I want to study art history, you know, on the weekends. No, the data we share with you come from people who have actually bought the product called online education. And let me just share with you a few demographics. We are not going to dwell on the demographics. The other data are more pertinent to your programming. But it is dominated by a female market, as you can see quite well here. And that is important to your marketing messages and to your marketing style. It's far more female than your post-traditional student overall and studying in various formats. So there is an orientation toward the female market. In terms of employment status, I'm impressed with the fact who are part-time or not employed. These people don't have the time constraints that you might think they have, particularly among the undergraduates, for taking on online education or taking on any education to further their education. So they're looking for credentials, they're looking for skills and competencies to get back probably into that full-time market arena. Now, one key demographic, Andrew, that's not here, but I think we can say we're a little bit hesitant in showing you the age data because it does fluctuate a bit, but the general pattern among age is they're getting younger. The exact numbers sort of float from year to year, but the tendency for online learners to be younger, both at the graduate level and the undergraduate level, is right on target. So we're not dealing with the old, 30, 40-year-old returning adult students. No, we have many people in their 20s, early 20s, turning toward online education because they're looking for fast, accelerated, convenient ways to learn. Perhaps next year, Andrew, we'll be able to show some age data looking over the pattern of the last 8 years, right?
Sure. We can definitely look, obviously we looked, at that trend in I believe our 5-year report. We did a lot of trend analysis, and I think age was one of the key variables that we were looking at for that one. So yeah, we'll try to revisit that in 2019.
But the general pattern is they're getting younger.
General pattern, correct, is that they're getting younger, and I think that's what we were finding in that 5-year report that we put out 2 years ago there.
Exactly.
So, these are the key findings from that larger report that we've been talking about, and we're just going to walk through each of these key findings throughout the webinar and just touch on a couple of the key data points. But by no means are these all the questions that we asked and within the report. So this is really only a segment. So again, we always encourage you to go and download and go through the full report and find the questions that are most relevant for you. But we'll just try to touch on some of these key findings for the 2018 study. And one of the top findings for 2018 is around mobile-friendly content. We asked a few years ago around students using mobile devices, which we define as a smartphone or tablet, but not a laptop, if they were using them during their market looking for their online program, and then once they entered into their online program, how would they like to use it. So we looked at that again and found, again, that 99.9% of the respondents used a mobile device or own a mobile device, again, a smartphone or a tablet, and well over 80% there are using it at least some to do their research for identifying their online school that they wanted to attend. You see 11% there did all of their searching for their online programs using a mobile device. So you could see the importance of having not only mobile-friendly advertising talking about your online program and talking about your brand and your institution that you're offering these programs, but also when you have them look at that ad and act upon that ad and visit your website for information, they're going to do that through that mobile device that they're already using. They're not going to switch from that device into a desktop computer or a laptop computer. So it's very important that your online websites that house the information for your online programs be mobile friendly, and that the documentation that they may be looking for, so if they're looking for the price of the program, they're looking for what are some of the course descriptions for the program, that all that information is done and available in a mobile-friendly format, because we know that these online students are making a decision fairly quickly, and they're only looking at between 2 or 3 institutions. So if they go to your institution trying to find information about their online program, and it's not displaying properly on their smartphone, or it's not sizing right, or that attachment with the course descriptions isn't downloading properly on their device, they're just going to move on to the next one on the list. They're not going to necessarily take that time to switch their device in order to find that information.
Absolutely.
And then once they identify your online program and then they actually enroll in that program and enter the classroom, they're still looking to use that online device, that mobile device, again, a smartphone or a tablet, to access some of their course materials. This is asked of prospective students because it says, would you like to complete on your mobile device? And you see 12% want to complete their entire degree using their mobile device. They're just that comfortable using their device for every day that they could feel that they want to use that exclusively how to learn and complete their degree. You see the percent none, 18%. So again, over 80% would want to at least access some of their course material or complete some of their online studies using a smartphone or a tablet. Now, what's interesting about this is, again, this was asked of prospects. We asked them the same question to those that were currently enrolled in their program or recently graduated from their online program, and we said, how much did you complete using your mobile device? And you see this number, again, 12% of prospects wanted to complete their entire degree using a mobile device, but when we asked it to current students or alumni, it jumps to 20%. So once they get into their online program, they actually become more and more comfortable completing their studies using these smart devices. And then you see towards the bottom there, no, but I would have liked to, is 12%. So again, there was a portion there that wanted to use their mobile device more in their classroom, but just couldn't because, again, it wasn't a mobile-friendly classroom. It wasn't a mobile-friendly LMS, perhaps, or maybe the instructor, again, how they put together the course materials or the lectures weren't made available in a mobile-friendly format, and this obviously led to a negative experience for 12% of these students that wish they could have completed their studies using a mobile device. When we look at what exactly they want to do in the classroom using their mobile device, you see some things that are perhaps not surprising, like looking at their reading materials, because you can think of a tablet, like a Kindle, being able to do your reading on that. So that tends to make sense. Communications with professors, so having those chat functions or sending emails through the LMS. Being able to do that in a quick manner just by taking out their phone and doing it, 51% doing that. And then you have accessing the college's LMS. Now, some of these LMSs do have mobile-friendly functionality, and some of them, and not all of them do, though. So you see just something basic like accessing the LMS, sometimes there are barriers in place that are preventing students from being able to access that. So this question, actually continues on to this next slide, and then you see completing assignments and looking at lectures, 40 and 31% respectively. So being able to actually complete an assignment and submit it through using their mobile device rather than doing that work or being forced to go to their laptop to submit it or their desktop, being able to do so all in that one singular location. So perhaps they complete their reading using their mobile device, but then want to go on and submit the assignment, being able to do so seamlessly rather than having to switch devices would obviously be beneficial, given that 80+% of these students are looking to use their device in some form during their online studies. So for mobile friendly, we move on to career services. In 2017, we asked a question just simply, would you be interested or did you access career services, not really defining out what we meant by career services. And these online students, 75% of them said yes, they were interested or they did access career services during their studies, which was really surprising to us, because as we think about, online learners working full-time or part-time, being a little bit older, than your 18 to 22-year-old set, typically, that they are already in careers or have strong career aspirations, that they would need these services. But it turns out that they do need them and are looking for them. So
yes,
these list of career services continue. Yes, Carol?
Yeah, I was just going to say, based on our regional studies, the career services assistance has come up over and over again, and we were surprised. But when you look back on that earlier chart, only half of them are working full-time, right? So half of them are in maybe a career transition, and they are looking for advice. So that's one way you can stand out among all your competitors and think about the career directions and guidance you might give them, and that is a great promotional message to give them as you try to attract them to your institution. It's something we didn't expect, but it keeps coming up over and over again.
Right, and I think that kind of works out with what we're seeing here, because as we go through these next few slides here, I want you to pay attention to that top teal bar, the used, and then the bottom gold bar, the not offered but interested. And as we look at some of these services and you add those two numbers up, it's well over, 50, close to 60%, which, going back to Carol, what you were saying around that, those part-time individuals or those people transitioning, it's around, 50-odd% of that population. And these numbers somewhat match as we go through these between 30, 40, 50%, which are, as you know, is a significant number that I think is worthy of servicing with some of these services.
Absolutely.
So we see here, working with a career advisor, 50% used, 7% wished that they was not offered but they were interested in it. Self-assessment, so learning more about yourself and how you can match yourself up to a career. Again, adding those two bars up, well over 50%. Creating a resume, just a simple service you can think about, helping individuals put together their resume for their transitioning their career, adding their new skills that they're learning in their courses to their resume, again, well over 50%. And then we go to job search assistance, 40 plus 9, so 50% there looking for job search assistance would use that or wish they had it. Search websites maintained by the school, a career mentor. Again, we add those two bars up, and it's pretty compelling to see all these various services having such a strong interest from these online learners. Again, moving on, we have job fairs, internship assistance, and workshops, and ending with job shadowing and alumni events. Now, our takeaway here, again, is obviously there's interest for these services, but also thinking about these online students, making sure these services have some capability to be offered to them in an online environment. So if you think about career advising and resume creation, you can think of simple tools like Dropbox and Skype, or just emailing resumes back and forth and chatting online, through, Google Hangouts or Skype, being able to interact with some of these job search assistance tools and making them available in an online environment for these students to access. We'll see later in the study, I believe we cover that, obviously 2/3 to 3/4 of your students are coming within 100-odd-mile radius of your institution, and some of them will visit the campus, but, trying to eliminate those barriers to them that they don't have to come to campus for career services, I think would, again, be beneficial to you and to helping provide students with strong career outcomes as well.
Okay, moving on, let's talk about online learning and from the views of the users as a return on their investment. One of the areas of questioning was, what do you think about online learning quality? Is it equal or maybe better than regular classroom instruction? And the specific question was, how would you compare the instruction of your college level online with your college level classroom? And as you can see here, about half say it's about the same. I'm not sure your faculty administration would appreciate hearing that, but, half of them think there is no difference. And in fact, another 37% think it's better. So on the whole, you have people who go to online education, appreciate it, know its value, and think it's better than what they've received in the classroom. So this is great testimony to use in terms of attracting others and to convincing your faculty that it's an okay thing to do in the eyes of the buyer, the customer. The next question dealt with how would you assess the balance between the cost of online with the lifetime value of that degree or certificate. And over half says the value equals the cost. Now, some of you in the early days used to charge more for your online programs, but now we've seen a steady equaling of that cost. But whatever they're paying, they feel that the value equals the cost. And in fact, a third of them think the value exceeds the cost. So you've got, you know, an eager beaver kind of a set of people here who value what you're trying to market to them in online. So don't fear that you have to convince them to go on online. They see the value readily. Okay, moving on. Students want to study close to home, and boy, with our regional clients, they love to hear this because many of you in the audience, in fact, are smaller institutions in areas where you're reaching closer than farther away, and look at these data, and they have been consistent. I'm sure Andrew will agree. They've been consistent over the 7 or 8 years we've been doing this. How far do you live from the closest campus of this college in which you are enrolled online? And if you add up within 100 miles, we get 40, 50, 60, 70, 80%. Okay? So you do have your market closer than farther away. So when you think of your marketing, when you think of your marketing messages and the amount you spend on advertising and promotion, the nearer the better. And what that also means is you can identify your competition more easily because they're closer than farther away. We have a lot of nationwide institutions, you know, the Southern New Hampshires, and now I saw an ad last night for the new Purdue program. But those of you in our audience right now today can see that that you have a little bit advantage because of your proximity to most of the people who would come to you. Okay. Why did you choose, for the minority that chose something 100 miles away from you or farther, it was because of the program. And what we say to colleges that have boutique programs, I remember for the University of Louisiana, Monroe, or in Vermont, where we did something for the University of Vermont, where they were offering programs that were not on the popular demand scale, like sustainability or a PhD in family counseling. Then you could go nationwide because you need a larger audience for these more, we call boutique or niche topics. So the main reason they choose an institution more than 100 miles would be the program they wanted and the reputation. Of course, reputation would matter a lot in special disciplines where it doesn't matter that the college is across the country. It's just like it's the best in the market for that discipline. Okay. So we'll go on to diverse fields. Andrew.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the fields of study, which is obviously a question that we get pretty often whenever we talk about the study, and I'm sure, Carol, you always get asked, well, what program should I do online? Right. I think we've been asking a version of this question for all 7 of the years. We changed the methodology around a little bit with it in 2014, so when we do our comparisons, we go back to 2014 versus our current 2018 data. But even before 2014, going back to 2012, and I'm sure even before our study was put together, you know, business was and has been the largest field of study and most apparently readily available field of study offered online for all the years that we've been doing the study. And what we've been seeing over the last few years, you know, you have business, undergrad and grad, largest field, followed by health and medicine and computers and IT. That was pretty much the case in 2014 and then in 2018, what we've started to see is business start to cede share. Not necessarily if we look at it from an enrollment perspective. I think business programs are still seeing enrollments, but as the online market has grown and more programs have come online and more providers are offering programs, we see a diversification of these portfolios of programs that business has started to cede share to some of these other program areas being offered. So
that's right, and I'll note that at that, if you go back one, that graduate level business is definitely the MBA, which all of our institutions are seeing a decline, not, it's not going away, but there is a decline in demand, and that's very definite in all parts of the country.
And I think that's, again, that diversification for, do you need an MBA, or can you now go and get that software engineering graduate degree versus going to get an MBA or an MBA in IT management? As these different options come online, it starts to pull these students away. Maybe a nurse would even go on and get an MBA, but now they can get a healthcare administration degree, and it starts to pull some of these the MBA being that catch-all administration program, as some of these other fields start to offer their different management or graduate level credentials, the people start to become more focused in their studies. And I think that's where we're starting to see this seed of share from there. The other interesting part is not just business, but also graduate level education. You see in 2014, that gray bar on the bottom right was 22%. In 2018, it goes down to 14%. So as more and more states put an emphasis on teaching outcomes and student outcomes, rather than having those K-12 teachers go on and earn a master's degree for a pay increase or increase in stature, we start to see a softening of that graduate education market.
Absolutely.
Carol, do you have anything around education?
Yeah, we see that pattern dramatically across the country. Education and teaching at the graduate level has been continuously on a decline.
And then here we round out the end of those columns so that you see STEM. Again, you see STEM going from 6% at the grad level in 2014 up to 11% in 2018, and then the other portion, if we go back to this computers and IT slide, you see at the grad level 9% in 2014 up to 15% in 2018. So again, as more and more of these programs become being brought online, they unnaturally attract those students and pull them away as far as a market share away from some of those larger, more standing audiences like business. And this slide, again, just talks about that as well, that between 2014 and 2018, business, nursing, and education at the graduate level are some of the specific degree areas that we've seen decline in terms of their market share. And then with social work, computer science, IT, and nurse practitioners picking up their share at the graduate level. So now we look at within what students are learning and the types of different learning that they're interested in. And we've always looked at, for a number of years, looked at interest in competency-based programs. And we've always found strong interest within those programs because the value proposition for the students is really compelling. You're basically letting them show that they have mastery of a subject area, and they can gain, not necessarily credit, but they can get further through that program and less time, showing that mastery that they already have from their time in the workforce and their previous studies. Because again, we know that a lot of these online students have been studying online and in other forms of education before their most recent program. Again, I believe 75% at least of the undergraduate level have at least some credit, so they show that they have mastery and they can transfer that knowledge into a competency-based program and being able to complete it that much faster. So again, 49% would definitely consider such a program, and then another 48% would if they can just research a little bit more. And again, the goal of these innovations, go ahead, Carol.
No, I was just going to say, that is the big hurdle with competency, quote-unquote, competency-based programs. Very few understand exactly what it is. And as you know, Andrew, we've had to give very clear definitions when we ask this question about competency-based. So though it's a topic that has, among the leadership and the academicians, it has a lot of vibe. But with the consumer, it has to be well explained and understood because it's not as prevalent as we had expected to be at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. And then the goal around competency-based programs and some of the other areas that we'll talk about in just a minute is around, again, speed and cost savings for these students. So we're finding interest in, in these different types of programs. But again, the goal of these programs being to accelerate the student through the material and saving them, tuition dollars are being met by these students, with open arms in terms of being interested in these types of innovations. So the other one we looked at was, again, textbook-free courses, so courses that are using OERs. You see, in terms of student familiarity with here, 30% said they're very familiar with the topic of textbook-free courses, somewhat familiar 35%, and 14% saying that they've actually enrolled or completed a course that was textbook-free. The one question that we asked this year, which was somewhat new, was around prior learning assessments, or PLAs, and what we found was a pretty, as you see on the screen there, a pretty even one-third, one-third, one-third split in terms of did the school award you a prior learning assessment. 32% said yes, 36% said no, and 32% said unsure. Now, with many of the institutions we talk to, they have different prior learning assessment tools for various programs, but I think what we're seeing here is that students don't necessarily know about prior learning assessments. Obviously would be interested in them, again, saving them, time and money, being able to take their past credits or past experiences and translate them into credits for their future programs. But I think the onus here might be upon the institutions to put these different tools out there and make students aware of them. Because for 32% to say they were unsure and 36% to say no, that seems kind of interesting to us in terms of knowing that many schools do offer these types of assessments, but maybe students aren't knowledgeable enough to ask for them or aware enough to know how they work and how beneficial they could be.
That's
Carol?
absolutely right. Yeah, prior learning assessment is a great concept. It's just like earning transfer credits for prior learning. However, most people don't understand prior learning assessment. And many schools have not really promoted PLA and what it can do to help you finish faster and save more money. So when they hear the concept and you describe it to them, the prospective student likes the idea, just like they like how many credits are you going to accept from their past learning. So for those of you who've had this sort of ambivalence toward prior learning assessment, the concept itself is attractive to prospective students because it saves money and it saves time. You just have to explain it to them and offer it in a convenient and efficient manner.
So asking, again, as I was talking about, how many undergraduate credits do you have, again, you see we take the 11% and the 7% on the bottom, put them together, you're talking about, again, 80% of undergraduate students coming with at least some credits there. So I think, again, this shows the importance of transfer credit policies and also the prior learning assessments, being able to meet these students and bring them as many credits as possible into their program so that they can advance through their... Sure, go ahead.
Can I go back to that slide for a moment, because it just came up with a conversation I had the other day. We get lots of calls about how can we improve enrollments in our degree completion programs. And many people have degree completion programs where many institutions require 60 credits. Well, look right here. How many people want to continue but don't have 60 credits? Oh my God, it's a great number, isn't it? So look at the number of people that you're losing because of your requirements of it has to be 60 credits, thinking that you're going to be friendly to those community college students who, by the way, don't finish with 60 credits all the time. And so you're losing a huge population who come in with far less. All right, so they're looking for schools that'll take them and they're to complete their degree, but actually they don't have to complete it just for the last 2 years. It could be the last 2.5, 3 years. So you're missing out on a large pool.
So looking within the online classroom, we asked them around the importance of engagement to the success of them, to being able to engage with their classmates. And again, I think it's interesting that you think of these online students, you think about asynchronous learning and that you want to learn on your own time and independently. But we see that from these online students, actually a large percent of them here, over half, would feel that it's very important to them to be able to engage with their classmates. Right. And how that impacted their student success. Through various years of the survey that we've conducted, we've asked questions around synchronous sessions, and it seems to be met with a little bit of resistance to require synchronous sessions on a set day and time every single week. But we know, again, it's a little bit more about nuance in terms of perhaps that there is an assignment, during the course that may require them to interact with their students, their fellow students a little bit more, or maybe there is maybe one or two sessions per semester that would be made synchronous. I think there's ways to get at synchronous and interaction and engagement with fellow students that isn't always met with an every single week activity or an every single week session in order to force those interactions with these fellow students. On this slide here, we're looking at different activities and again how they impacted the success again from these current and recently graduated students' point of view. So again, you see on the far right there was synchronous sessions. 33% said they were very helpful, and another 37% said they were somewhat helpful. So again, a large percent there finding these interactions in these between these students, fellow students, to be valuable with them. But also they're looking for interactions, with their professor as well. So you see on the far left the videos and the PowerPoint presentations from the professor, obviously having a strong impact on their success. Obviously the textbooks as well, we can't forget them in terms of helping these individuals learn, and then also the assignments and the quizzes. What we see having a little bit less interaction. Let me see the next slide here. Oh, that was the only one for that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does go from left to right there with the synchronous sessions still being impactful for a large percent of these individuals. But I think once we start putting requirements on some of these items, that's where we start to see students start to meet with a little bit of resistance in terms of forcing them to participate rather than trying to cultivate that participation through less requirements placed around them on set meeting times. Carol, did you have anything to add to this slide?
No, I think that's absolutely right. Of course, everybody would love to have a synchronous situation, but their time constraints and their other responsibilities just don't allow them to be there at the right time at the right place. So that's the reality of it. Let me move on to some multi-channel marketing data that we have. And one of the first things we asked is, where do you remember seeing advertisements on online programs when you started your search? Now, this does not say what convinced you about a certain institution, but where is it visual? Where do you see and think about online education? And of course, it's through the Googles and the Yahoo websites and their ability to go there probably first when they're interested in a program. So you've got to be well optimized on these search engines because it's very high in value. Commercials on television, of course. I mean, if you look at some of the major institutions, and as I said earlier, I just saw the first ad from Purdue. Now, I think what these larger institutions that can afford the television time are doing is building the interest and maybe ease of coming on to online education, which can help you when you start recruiting locally. So you can use some of these commercials to say, see, online has all these values, but we're within 100 miles of you, so this is good for you and us. Email, believe it or not, still about 30%, so don't give up on that. That more traditional manner of alerting people to your programs, ads on websites and ads on Facebook and other social media. That seems to be, I think that continues. Does it continue on the next page?
Correct.
Okay, college fairs, well, you can imagine most of these people aren't coming directly from college, so it's not too important. College search sites are not as important as they once were. Videos on YouTube and direct mail. Well, direct mail, we knew that. We knew that years ago. So this gives you a nice hierarchy of what to use and what to stay away from and where to invest your money. Let's go to some pricing data that we have. And the first question that was asked was, which of the following statements about tuition is the closest? And for that all-important decision of where to enroll. And 72%, well, let's look at that 28%. Tuition for my preferred program is the lowest among the programs I evaluated. Well, lo and behold, they do not necessarily take the lowest price programs, correct? But look at the others. It's higher, but the program's convenience, within 100 miles, okay. It's format, online. It's schedule. It's 6-week courses, and it's location. My goodness, if I need help, I can get to that campus within an hour or so. So that's very important. Tuition for my preferred program is higher than some, but the content was exactly what I wanted. So these are the attributes you need to market when you're thinking of particular programs to promote in your locale. And finally, the school and the program chose which has the best reputation. So building up the credibility by using employer endorsements and alumni and so forth are very critical. Moving on.
And I think the value of this slide here also just talks about, you know, we always talk about tuition and fees being one of the top factors that these students are looking at, but not all of the schools can be the least expensive in their market. And if you're not going to be the least expensive, these three options here show you that 72% of students are willing to pay a little bit more if they feel they're going to get something in return for that.
Right, like I can finish faster and I'll save more money, or you take more of my credits, or you offer PLA, and so things like that. So those things make a big difference. Moving on. The per credit tuition cost, let's just look at undergraduate students. What are they paying? Well, a third are paying $300 or less. Those are probably those students at public institutions. But 37% are up to $300 to $600 a credit. And then we've got 30% of them in the higher bracket. And that sort of fits with the proportion that go to public institutions versus private institutions. So this is a gauge of, you know, where the volume of participation is heading because of cost. Moving on. And this is at the graduate level, and of course it's lower at the lower levels, only 21 and 13, 34% are under $600, and 50% are $800 or more. So it leads you to believe that many of the private institutions have captured that graduate market because the prices tend to be higher. To what extent would an annual, this is great data, which extent would an annual scholarship have swayed your decision to enroll in one college versus another? Just for $500, just to say in your Google ad or your email that we are offering $500 scholarships would convince them that you're the place to go. So any sort of money so that you can go home and tell your wife or your children, look, I got a $500 scholarship. It's not very much, and yet it's a great promotional tool. And you gain, I think the gain the much, as you look at that hierarchy, you gain the most at offering $500. All right? So scholarships are a great have great come-on value. Okay. Students choose online learning. If the program you wanted was not available in an online format, how likely is it that you would enroll in a classroom program? Well, 24, 1 out of 4 would not, but almost 60% might do that. So I see this competition, Andrew, increasing a bit, that they want this program so much. Yes, they want it online, but if they have to have that content and they have to have those competencies and they have to have that skills, they might go back to the classroom. And that, again, is convenient for those colleges that are within 100 miles of this population. Okay? Which of the following features of some online programs most important in your selection of where to enroll? Remember the available scholarships. You only have to give $500 and you get a large core of people who say, hey, that might be the place for me. No doubt, courses offered year-round. Why? I want to get it over with. I don't need my summers off. I don't need January free. I don't need May free. Let's get it over with. Let's run back-to-back courses over 12 months, and I can get out in 3 years versus 4 years. Courses are self-paced that don't have deadlines. That's highly appealing. Ability to complete studies in less time than a classroom program, of course. Ability of fast-tracked accelerated courses. Yeah, I can say over and over in the 30 studies we've conducted in the last year or two, 6 to 8 week courses year-round is the ticket. Okay, moving on. So the key findings in general by those topic areas that we've discussed, the mobile-friendly content, this is just a review. Optimizing, you've got to have your pages and the classroom materials optimized for mobile. Career services, yes, they do want them, and that's a great attractive value in your marketing messages. The return on investments, use those outcomes we gave you earlier in your messaging material. Diversify your portfolio, and remember, it's not just the MBA. And we had so much competition for the MBA online programs 3-4 years ago, and now you can diversify and pull up your other strengths. And innovative pedagogy and programs, of which Andrew nicely described in terms of competency-based and other aspects. The online classroom interaction is important, more than we had ever thought before. They do like a little touch and feel, as you can see from that earlier data. And marketing is just not single-tracked. You have to use messaging across many digital and even some traditional channels. Remember that. If you charge more, talk about why it's worth it. You can get out of here faster. We accept more of your credit. We'll give you PLA, prior learning value, and so forth. And students choose online learning. Online presents the opportunity to innovate your delivery. I think I once said, and I've been in this field quite a few years, but I can remember saying 15 years ago to some institutions, this isn't for you. You can't get into this online market. Look at what your professors are saying. Look at what your administration is leaning toward. You know, it's not for you. There is not one institution in this country where I can say that now. Everybody has to have a piece of this action. Okay, now we're ready. Do we have questions, Andrew?
Yep, we've been collecting some throughout the presentation here, but as we draw to a close here, everyone, if you just want to start typing in some questions into the Q&A box there, we'll be going over them and we'll pick some out to talk about now. But as you see it here on the bottom, there is a link to download the full report, and if obviously Carol and I's contact information, if you have any other specific questions that perhaps we don't get to the webinar today, feel free to reach out to us with any questions about the study as well.
Absolutely.
So, Carol, so let's look through some of these here. And so have we seen changes in the last few years around mobile-friendly device usage? Has that usage grown over the recent years? I would say that we did ask a question a few years ago around using, when they brought in to start using their mobile device, it seemed that we had kind of a timeline in terms of when did you, use your smart device, when did you go to your PC, and when did you actually pick up a phone during the enrollment process. And it seemed to move in that direction, that during the initial search phases, they were using their mobile device, but then when it came down to actually asking questions and enrolling, they would start to move and submit their application through their PC and pick up the phone with any pertinent questions. Carol, from your point of view, when you work with these institutions, have you seen or heard any stories around the progression to more mobile-friendly content?
Yeah, in general, there's a pattern of going forward of that. It doesn't come up as an issue very much anymore. I think it's just, it's just assumed.
Here, Carol, for about the methodology, how representative is our sample to the overall population?
I think the reliability is within what that framework is that is acceptable. What we have is a national panel that our interview agency uses, and runs through hundreds of thousands of people, and we get their eligibility by certain characteristics, and they have to. You saw those screener questions we have, which makes it, that's the population we need to talk to, but it's done on the basis of an interview agency we use that uses a national panel. And there is an incentive. We do give them an incentive for participating.
Right,
it's
and
like
I believe in the
plus or minus 5% reliability.
And during the methodology section of the report, I think we also talk about, the number of states that these individuals are coming from. So there
right.
is, it is a nationally, I think, representative sample, as Carol was talking about.
That's right. We got the participation by state, and it pretty nicely matches population size representative.
Did the study reveal any findings for how students prefer to receive academic advising or support services during their online program?
Yes. We didn't, remind me, because we do these surveys locally, but Andrew, when we do them locally, we do ask that, and they want it virtually. There's no doubt about it. They don't want face-to-face. Maybe even telephone is losing interest. They would, they want it virtually.
I believe there was a chart in the report that did talk about delivery. I'm not sure if it was preference or if it was asking those that the service was available to, that they said, yes, we had the services available to us, that we asked how were they made available. So less preference, more how was it actually offered. But I would agree with you, Carol, that I think the preference for online learners would first be, again, the ease of having these services available to them online.
Absolutely.
Because making them come to campus, I think presents a hurdle for them to receive the support that they're looking for.
That is true, but also don't remember the distance thing, the 100 miles. So it's kind of an attribute that while we have virtual counseling, don't forget we're within, we're here, and we have off-campus sites and so forth. So that's a nice little advantage you can also use in your messaging to attract students. When you need us, we're here.
Well, I think you should answer this one first, and then I'll answer it second. What was the biggest aha moment coming from the results of the survey this year?
Oh, gosh. Let me see. Wow, you go first. Let me think about that, Andrew.
I think the aha moment for me this year would be around, again, some of those nuances around tuition and fees and pricing that, because for years we found that tuition and fees was one of those top deciding factors for these students, and we always, ran with that for, our headlines, and when we talk to schools and when we talk to, some of the publications that write about, the study. And I think, digging into it more and finding that tuition and fees is still very important to them, but there are different things schools can do to combat that and be seen as an affordable option other than just lowering their tuition rate. Because I think we see the larger trend in higher ed around discount rates, and we all know that that's not sustainable for the future, and to know that with online you couldn't do the same thing, just keep going to a discount rate or lowering your tuition. So I think it's interesting to see these nuances.
Right, and I think what I'd like to say, not just this year, but the general pattern over the 7 years of this population getting younger. So we can't use the concept that online learning is for adult students. Online learning, has no age factor when it comes to online, and a lot of our colleges have to wake up to that, because we're going to have many, many more students entering first year, second year. They're coming from more diverse backgrounds. They're working and studying at the same time. They have multiple responsibilities, and that's going to increase in the types of people. I think, what is it, only 25% of undergraduates today study full-time, day, and in residence? So that other 75%, what do you think they're going to be leaning toward so that they can manage all their life responsibilities in an efficient manner, even their learning to get a degree to get the job they want?
Right. So last year, you talked about the fact that students wanted to know how much credit they could expect before applying to the school. Do you have any data on that this year? How important is this really?
It's very important. Not only that, it's not the credit only, it's the financial aid. We found in recent studies they want to know their financial aid numbers. They want to know how many credits you're going to accept because they're shopping around. And we know that they have multiple options. And they want to know how they're going to pay for this, because the other thing, Andrew, that we don't show how they're paying for it, but in our local surveys, they're paying it through personal funds and loans. So they're very, very conscious of benefits that will lower the cost, like accept my credits, I need to know that before I select you, and tell me what my financial aid package is.
In the mobile environment, what about the design differences between tablet mobile versus smartphone mobile? Is the movement towards smartphone or tablet? I suspect the former. In the survey, we did, as I said, 99.9% of them had a mobile device. So we do have that bit of data, I think, but I'm not sure if we split out the types of devices. I know in years past we did ask for the specific device they were using. Obviously there's all different versions, Android and iOS and so on and so forth. So we didn't actually break the data down in that form in the survey, but we obviously could look to do that in the future, and we do have past year's data on that. But obviously with the movement and whatnot, I would want to report out 2016, mobile-friendly data in a 2018 environment. So I think we're at 2 o'clock now, so I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope you found the information we shared valuable. Please let us know what you thought about today's webinar by clicking the survey link posted in the chat and Q&A panes. Today's webinar was presented by the Learning House and Aslanian Market Research. So, Carol, I just wanted to thank you for joining us today and wish everyone a wonderful day.